The 20th century conquered the physical world. We split the atom, mapped the genome, and optimized global supply chains with flawless organizational logic. Yet, exactly as our technological systems reached peak cohesion, our art and culture fractured into total, unreadable chaos. To understand how the system broke, we have to look at what it was trying to achieve. For decades, the aesthetic ideal was modernism, rational, strictly functional, and entirely stripped of historical ornament. This is that ideal materialized. Mies van der Rohe's Neue Nationalgalerie embodies the strict ethos, where form simply follows function. It is universal, logical, and absolute. Then comes the postmodern rebellion. The Portland building aggressively mocks that modernist purity. It slaps oversized, cartoonish classical statues and cheap commercial colors directly onto a standard office grid. It relies entirely on irony and pastiche. Postmodernism functions as the physical evidence of a structural collapse. It marks the specific point where the cyclical cultural system, the machine that produced every major style for millennia, finally failed. We can actually map this subjective history of art onto an objective graphical model to isolate exactly where the engine broke down. The loss of a unified, universal style is the defining baseline of our current era. We live in a state of permanent aesthetic anarchy. If we plot the timeline of human cultural evolution, starting 50,000 years ago and moving toward the modern era, a distinct mechanical pattern emerges. This graph maps human cultural evolution. Notice how historical styles don't appear at random. They rise and fall in predictable, undulating waves. A healthy civilization follows a strict upward trajectory, culminating here, at a classical peak of near inhuman perfection. Once a style reaches that peak, the next generation is forced to innovate through excess. They add unnecessary beauty to the work, creating kitsch, or they turn toward naturalistic abnormalities. This drives the wave into a long, descending shadow. The line eventually intersects the horizontal axis here, at the zero-value baseline. This marks the moment a specific style exhausts its internal logic and dies out in pure ornamental decadence. Historically, this specific mechanical cycle of rise, peak, and decay simply repeats, resetting across different civilizations and different epochs, until the anomaly that breaks the graph, the chaotic 20th century. Instead of unified stylistic waves carrying an entire society, culture shatters into isolated, competing frequencies. These individual spikes barely rise above the zero-value line before crashing back down. History no longer moves in collective waves. The unified engine of cultural evolution has fragmented into a sea of isolated individuals fighting for airspace. To see why that timeline shattered, we must stop looking at the horizontal march of history and instead examine the vertical cross-section of society at any given moment. This is a value pyramid. In a functioning historical epoch, culture operates as a strict vertical hierarchy. At the wide base, the souterrain, you find amateurs and producers of kitsch. This chaotic layer acts as the vital, unrefined cultural nutrient layer for the entire structure. As those raw cultural nutrients move up through the average and above-average tiers of society, they are continuously filtered, tested, and refined. Finally, those refined concepts synthesize at the very top into distinct personalities, the true artistic geniuses of an era, who define the style of their time. But this ecosystem relies entirely on gravity. The geniuses at the peak cannot exist without a steady, organic upward flow from the unrefined base. External shocks destroy this metabolism. When totalitarian regimes seize control, like the Soviet occupation during the Prague Spring, they artificially flip the pyramid, suppressing true personalities and violently severing the upward flow of culture. When the vertical pipeline of refinement is severed, the society loses its mechanism for identifying and elevating groundbreaking talent. While outsiders like Egon Boggy continue to create on the periphery through Samizdat, the central culture itself stagnates, unable to process the nutrients it needs to produce a new classical peak. Extreme commercialization and mass media permanently dissolve the pyramid's vertical structure. This animated model shows exactly what happens. The weight of mass consumerism drops onto the vertical hierarchy and squashes it flat into a two-dimensional, horizontal grid. On this new horizontal plane, objective aesthetic value is abolished. All truths, all styles, and all artistic outputs are declared entirely equal. But a system still needs to sort its participants. Without vertical aesthetic height to measure art, culture replaces quality with a purely numerical horizontal metric, viewership. Andy Warhol embodied this commercial flattening perfectly. Equating art with mass production and endless repetitive advertising, he became the first master of the horizontal plane. This creates a brutal consequence. Because creators can no longer be structurally new or better, they must simply escalate. They get louder, faster, and more violent, slicing media into highly stimulating, rapid-fire clips just to hold attention. In a flattened landscape, artistic success is no longer an intrinsic quality of the work. It is merely a sequence number in a statistical ranking of attention. So how does a true artist survive in a flattened landscape that strictly demands mass-market viewership but violently rejects intellectual depth? They use a survival mechanism called double coding. They engineer a single artifact to communicate two completely conflicting messages at the exact same time. Postmodern pioneers like Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown achieved this architecturally. They rebelled by fusing high art classical symbols with the cheap, disposable aesthetics of billboards and commercial strips. Umberto Eco applied this to literature. He took easily digestible, low-brow pulp genres, like medieval detective stories, and constructed them out of highbrow, labyrinthine intertextual puzzles. In cinema, Quentin Tarantino mastered this format by recycling the trash of 20th century pop culture into high art. Take Pulp Fiction. On the surface, it functions flawlessly as a low-level, hyper-violent crime thriller designed specifically to capture a mass-market viewership. But beneath the violence, it holds a second, hidden code. It is a dense, non-linear, ironic puzzle, loaded with self-referential mechanics designed exclusively to flatter the cultural elite. Double coding is the ultimate postmodern survival tool. It allows an artifact to thrive in the horizontal anarchy by feeding the masses with spectacle while simultaneously challenging the intellectuals with structure. If double coding masks intent and the hierarchy is permanently flattened, how do we structurally identify what is kitsch and what is art? This flowchart defines kitsch. A stimulus fires, bypasses interpretation, and strikes an emotional target. True art, however, is a multi-layered code. It forces the brain to route the stimulus through a tangled labyrinth, initiating an active adventure of interpretation. We no longer have a centralized vertical hierarchy to filter the nutrients and tell us what is good or bad. We are alone on the horizontal plane. Postmodern art no longer mimics reality. It remixes past texts, creating an endless, immersive labyrinth of references, mirrors, and static. The postmodern individual can no longer afford to be passive. To survive the escalating noise of the horizontal plane, you cannot wait for the culture to synthesize meaning for you. You must become an active decoder, constructing your own meaning amidst the noise.